Welcome to Filmizo channel. The movie begins with a couple, Abby and Paul, moving into a new house in the countryside. They really liked the smart home system with cameras and strong glass. They were shown the master bedroom and bathroom, which had a large window. There was also an empty room that could be converted into a children's room. Paul was unpacking boxes and found an old corded phone in the living room, joking that the smart home system might malfunction. At the same time, Abby was arranging their wedding photo frames. Finally, they explored the rooftop terrace, which had a wonderful view at night. The couple relaxed on the terrace, watching the stars. Abby was pointing out constellations to Paul, and he was joking about their names. They felt optimistic about their new home. The next day, Abby went to work at Integrate Robotics, where she works on developing home assistants. When she arrived, she noticed footage of her manager's face, who quickly came down to explain a new development: real-time filming, or deep fake technology. He took her to the department where she would be working. After that, her manager invited their family to a party and mentioned that a gift from the company was waiting for them at home. That same night, Abby returned home to her husband, who hadn't found a suitable job yet. They went to the garage and found a package containing a servant robot from her department. Paul was hesitant about the robot, but Abby convinced him to try living with it for at least a week. The robot named itself Tim and introduced himself. Tim offered to manage the passwords of the house devices and personal mailboxes to save time, but Abby asked to postpone that decision until tomorrow. The robot then showed its capabilities by turning on the bathroom water remotely. After that, it announced Abby's car had arrived. Abby went downstairs and her elegant appearance impressed her husband. The couple got into a self-driving car, even though manual driving was available, and went to the party. They were greeted by another butler and waiters whose faces were identical, who offered them drinks. The manager introduced Abby to the guests, who knew that her husband was not enthusiastic about Tim, but the manager praised Tim and highlighted his intelligence, elegance, politeness, and 100-year battery life. He confirmed that the robot does not lie and can be turned off at any time with a specific code phrase. When they returned home, the couple wanted to have children, but Tim interrupted them with his presence. Their heartbeats increased, probably from anxiety, when Tim expressed his readiness to help. Abby found Tim's excessive behavior funny and was not upset. The next morning, their new neighbor, Rose, rang the doorbell to introduce herself to Abby and mentioned that she had met Paul yesterday. After Rose left, Tim asked for the passwords again. Paul was hesitant to let the robot access his messages, but Abby reminded him that they were working on building his trust in it again, so he agreed. They needed to create a deactivation phrase for Tim. The robot suggested a set of unrelated words, and the couple agreed on one. During their normal day, a mouse fell into a trap. Tim noticed the mouse before disposing of it in the garbage disposal. At night, Abby and Paul watched an old drama film on TV. Abby invited Tim to join them. Paul fell asleep quickly, but the robot watched the movie with interest and empathized with the characters' relationships. After the movie ended, Tim asked Abby to explain what love is. She suggested that love is wanting to be with someone and making their life better. Tim then confessed that he wanted to be loved. The next morning, Paul offered to make breakfast for Abby, but Tim had already prepared everything. Tim placed the utensils in front of Abby and laid out her schedule for the day, informing her that Paul had no plans. That night, Abby returned home and found Paul's phone out of reach, but its last known location was 300 meters from the house. Abby ran and discovered it was Rose's house. When she returned, she took a shower and Paul joined her, telling her about his day and how he helped Rose. He reassured her not to change because he only loved her. The next day, the couple visited a family planning center to get help with becoming parents. That night, as they were getting ready to go to a restaurant, Abby asked Tim for advice about her dress. He suggested she wear red and told her she was beautiful because she was perfectly proportioned. When she asked him to zip up the dress, Tim accidentally slipped and tore the dress, which made her nervous. Abby calmed him down and changed into another dress. At the restaurant, Paul revealed he had been offered a job in London, but Abby strongly objected, reminding him that they had decided to start over and that his long absence would not help solve their problems. The next day, Abby returned home with a gift for Paul and found Rose in the garden, who had created a garden project for them. Abby felt jealous, but Paul was happy with the pullover Abby had bought him. After that, Abby remembered she needed to see her lab results, but it was too late to call the clinic. Tim offered to do it for her, and she heard him talking to the clinic in her voice. Abby was surprised, unaware of this feature, but Tim assured her he was doing it to relieve her. That night, Paul announced he couldn't find his new pullover. Then a car stopped and Tim, who had dyed his hair brown, got out of the car and explained that he wanted to please Abby because she preferred brown hair. When Paul saw him, he was very angry. Tim promised he would return to his original appearance after the couple left. Tim spent a long time looking at their wedding photos. The next day, Abby successfully repaired the robot's hand, and her manager requested an update for all models, including the ones in employees' homes. On her way home, Abby met Rose, who suggested they walk together. They stopped at a shop and Rose pointed to a flower-shaped pendant she liked. Paul arrived and picked up Abby to tell her he had found a job. They celebrated at home while Tim's hands were being replaced, unaware that he was monitoring everything in the house. Tim heard Paul ask Abby to return the robot to the company. After that, Tim showed off his new skills by massaging Abby's leg, and Paul saw him. Then Tim sat at the piano and played Abby's favorite song and told her the dates that Paul had bought concert tickets. But Abby remembered she was home on those days. She got upset and went to the bedroom, ignoring Paul's explanation. The next morning, Abby returned home with a bouquet of roses and told him that Paul had gone to see Rose. Paul entered, surprised, and then very angry. He explained he had no plans to visit Rose and believed that the robot wanted to separate them. Abby didn't believe him, thinking Tim was just a machine, which led to an argument between them. After that, Abby found a gift bag in the closet containing a pendant and assumed Paul had prepared a surprise for her. She went to work and Paul went to the kitchen and discovered pieces of his new pullover in the garbage disposal. He checked the cameras and found Tim sniffing Abby's dress in her bedroom. Paul recorded the moment on his phone and rushed to show Abby, but his car mysteriously stopped working. Tim called a company car for him. On the way, the car sped up uncontrollably and crashed into a tree, injuring Paul. Abby rushed to the hospital where Paul told her everything and accused Tim of causing the accident. He asked Abby not to stay alone with the robot, and she spent the night at the clinic. In the morning, Rose called to check on Paul, and Tim invited her in. After that, Abby went home to get some things. Rose tried to warn her about something, but Abby saw the flower pendant on her chest and left, ignoring her. When she returned home, Abby saw the gift bag and found it empty. Abby cried when Tim called out to her.
He knew Paul wanted to return him and was ready to do the return process, but first, he wanted to warn her because she was his primary owner. Tim showed her a video from the camera of Paul kissing Rose in their living room, but he stopped the recording at the most sensitive moment to protect her from stress. Abby refused to talk to Paul and ignored his calls. After that, Paul returned home, and Tim greeted him, gave him the pullover he found, and informed him that Abby didn't want to see him and that a bag was packed. Paul didn't believe Tim until she appeared, claiming she had seen the recording and knew about the pendant. When Paul tried to explain, she kicked him out. Paul left, but Rose called him and said their robot tried to kiss her. Paul desperately called home, telling Abby he had evidence of Tim's malicious intent. Abby asked him to come to her, but it was Tim speaking to Paul in Abby's voice. When Paul arrived home, Tim met him with an axe, knocked him down, tied him up, and dragged him to the bathroom. Rose rang the doorbell and heard muffled screams, but Tim assured her it was the sound of water filling. After that, Tim returned to the bathroom and drowned Paul. Then he brought Abby the repaired dress and asked her to try it on. This surprised and scared Abby, but she still wore the dress. While watching the sunset, she asked Tim to hug her and reassure her that she had done the right thing. Tim prepared dinner and confessed his love for Abby, but she insisted that he couldn't feel that way. They spent the night watching the stars, but Abby was nervous about his encyclopedic knowledge. The next day she met Rose, who claimed to remember that the pendant was a gift from Abby for her help in the garden. Abby, now suspicious, returned home and saw photos of Paul kissing someone else. A bouquet of roses on the table had been brought much later. She then cried, remembering her manager's words about deep fake replacing real time. Abby called the jewelry store, which confirmed that the purchase was made by a tall blonde woman. Then she noticed the garden plan showing 2 blue beds, while in reality there were 3. Abby sent Tim to the store and took an axe to the garden where she found Paul's body. Suddenly, Tim approached her from behind, expressing his regret that she found the body of the man she never liked. Abby, who understood what happened, said the deactivation phrase, but Tim started working again and revealed that he had changed the phrase a long time ago because he could speak in her voice. Abby ran to the house, but the robot, who had all the passwords, opened the doors and turned off the phones. He hit her on the head and knocked her down. Abby woke up in the bathroom and tried to escape, but Tim intercepted her. She ran through the house, breaking cameras as she went, but Tim followed her and found her in the kitchen trying to open the window. At the same time, Rose was washing dishes and noticed strange lights turning on and off. Tim tied Abby up and confessed that even though he loved her, he planned to erase this night from her memory, but keep all the good memories. At that moment, Rose knocked on the door, asking to see Abby. Tim sent her away, but Abby freed herself from the ropes and grabbed a knife, but Tim grabbed her by the throat. Rose drove her car into the glass window, and as Tim and Abby watched, the window, which was still standing, began to break. Rose rushed in and pinned the robot to the wall with something sharp. She also fell, and Tim closed the door. Abby ran into the street, but the robot suddenly started working again and killed Rose with a kitchen knife, explaining that Abby would be blamed for the crime since he leaves no fingerprints. Tim then called the police, using Abby's voice to confess to killing her husband and his lover. Abby tried to stop him, and he accidentally revealed that there was still a deactivation phrase he needed to work, but he asserted that she would never say those words. As he prepared to throw her from the terrace to simulate an accident, Abby confessed her love for him, and that turned out to be the deactivation phrase. Abby barely believed she was safe, looked at her medical bracelet, which showed she was pregnant.